If you have to leave early, please get in line to sign the petition if you want to sign the petition. Okay, will the meeting please come to order? We're having just a very short meeting with the board, and then we'll introduce our Dale, our one of our board members, and he will introduce our guest for the night.
Oh, is that my seat? For the night? I get to spend the night?
If you like, we'll accommodate you.
Tim, this is for the camera.
Oh, that's right, Art. Oh, we got to say thanks to Art.
I turned this off. Okay, we're going to need everybody to please be quiet. Don't even talk in line because you won't be able to hear me. We are going to just have some quick comments here. The minutes. Does anyone want to move that the minutes be approved from the last meeting?
So moved.
Moved, second? Aye? Okay. Nay? No. All right, the meetings are approved. Minutes. Meeting. Will somebody please put a script up for me? It'd be so much easier. Our treasurer, Norma Nick Taylor, where do we stand?
Because somebody stole all of our recycles, we have no income from recycles this past month. Can I yell instead?
Just talking about it. Oh, sorry.
Who asked you? Okay, as we mentioned at our last meeting, we gave $350 to VMRC for the legal fund. We paid our dues to VMRC for $115.50. And we paid Linda for many, many months of voice shot, $165. See, you only have one hand to work with and you got this. So we now have cash of $6,290.50. I think we're doing great.
Thank you, Norman. Here's another envelope with money in it for BMRC. And before I go any further, I want to remind you, I'm sure some of your neighbors asked for you to sign for them. That's a no-no. Please don't do it. They won't be a legal signature. And Dale will be going around, and I don't know who else, to get signatures from the people that did not come tonight. Could not, whatever. Manager's report, there is none because we have no manager. I have no idea when we're going to get one. I've asked and asked, and they keep passing the buck. So now I've got to call or email Dennis Dollar to see if he knows.
There is an opening.
There is an opening, yes. We're going to skip down to the welcome report. Do you have anything to say?
We welcomed one couple last month.
Welcomed one couple last month. Or this month. Okay.
We have no new move-ins.
And no new move-ins that we know of. Okay, now we're going to skip down to, we'll talk about voice shot next month. We're going to skip. We're skipping a lot. Because we have a guest speaker and we're limited on time.
You don't need to know what sunshine report is?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you've got 4 thinking of you cards and 1 sympathy card.
1 sympathy card, 4 thinking of you cards for the the sunshine report. And now I would like to turn this over to Carmel to tell us where we stand in the voting process for the HOC. You want to come up here?
They're afraid of it.
No, I don't want to yell at everybody. We have, I lost my list. We have five new people
We have 5 new people that are running for the board
and 2 that are rerunning.
and 2 that are rerunning. Okay?
Ballots will be out
The ballots will be out
in your tubes before September.
in your tubes before September. And it will have the instructions on what to do with them, not in the file. Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dale. I hope it's okay with everybody here on the board, but we do have to get to our guest speaker.
Thank you all for coming out here, taking your time. We really appreciate it. You all got the notices, and that's why you're here, because of what's going on with the mobile home issue with the pass-throughs, and it seems like it's maintenance, but they call it capital improvements, and we get to pay. So I'm going to introduce Chuck Eskew, our speaker this evening. He resides at the Patrician Mobile Home Park with his wife, and he's been involved in this whole process for about 4 years. He's also the vice president for the VMRC, the Ventura Mobile Home Residential Council. So without further ado, here's Chuck.
I hope I don't pull that speaker over. Well, it's a short cord. Oops, sorry about that. Dale held to his word. He told me it was not black tie tonight, so I'm wearing my Hawaii shirt. So anyway, I got involved in things that were going on kind of indirectly. I moved into Patrician 22 years ago, it'll be 23 years the end of this year. And like a lot of people, I would get my rent change on, in our case, on October 1st. And we would also be told that we could pick up a copy of the rent administrator's report, which seemed like a very distant kind of bunch of numbers and things. And I just collected them, basically. And what happened was that our association president, when we had an association over there, got together with another gentleman in our park, and they found out that our management company was operating without a license since 1992. Yeah, we did that, woo, all the way to the White House. But this fellow got together with a gal that was the president. She replaced me as president over there. And they started to finally look at the rent administrator's report and try and figure it out, what it was all about. And this is the document that's issued by the city to us that calculates all the rents and the goodies that we're faced with. And it's available at every park. I don't know, if you get it and you don't know how to read it, get a hold of your committee members to go over it with you. But there's a wealth of information in here, especially if you want to find out what's going on your space. So that's the rent administrator's reports. But anyway, they got curiously looking at this in June of 15 and curious on one thing about, we were getting hit with tree trimming in our park, and someone had gone further and looked into the civil code and found out that the civil code said that the tree trimming was the responsibility of the park owner. Well, that sent up red flags right away, so we called for a meeting of the park mainly on the tree issue. And one thing led to another, and we were trying to get somebody interested to find out what was going on with our management company, but it ended up in the district attorney's office, and they said they didn't have the time to mess with it. So it went through every state agency we could find. But that group of people came to me and asked me if I had any of the rent administrator's reports, and I had a handful of them, and I really hadn't myself paid much attention. Just going along, seniors, my wife jokingly said, you know, when we were asked why would you move a mobile home park, she said, well, it's from here to Ivy Lawn, but that's where that kind of was a joke. And like a lot of people that are sitting up here, I had no intentions of getting involved in legal matters, retired and hoping to live a retirement life in a nice mobile home park. But suddenly we found out there were problems that were impacting that life, and they're impacting you guys. All the parks in the city of Ventura. There are 12 parks. There are 7 active parks in VMRC that are really active. I first met your group in April. It seems like it's been years, but it was just April of last year that I met at Linda's house with a group of people that were forming up to be your rent committee at that time. And we were pretty well into it by that time because we started in 15. And the patrician, I don't want to say this to make it sound like we're taking credit for it, but we were able to fortunately get an attorney pro bono to work on the tree issue and bring it to the city's attention that they were illegally charging for tree trimming and passing it through to us to reimburse the park owner, and had been forever. And so he wrote a letter to the city, and suddenly the red flags went up at City Hall, and they suddenly informed us that they didn't have a rent review board. There hadn't been one for 10 years at that time, so that's going back to 2005, that the rent review board had not been functioning. And quite frankly, since they've reinstated it in 2016, they haven't showed much assistance to us park residents. I really don't want to get off on one subject too long, but the rent board meets every 3 months. We don't get the agenda till 72 hours before the meeting. So if something pops up and we want to speak about it, we can't address it unless we're on the agenda. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. And some of you people are involved in that and know some of the things that I'm talking about, but let me drift back to the first thing that I think you all need to know is unfortunately we don't get told this by the park managers when we sign up to buy in a mobile home park, but there basically are 4 different governing documents that govern how and the laws of mobile home living. And the first one is the rent control ordinance for the city. And that takes precedence below the civil code, which, if you see where to go here, I'm not doing very well here. Oh, here it is. You all have seen that brown copy. It's available at the park office. You should have got one when you bought. That's the next in line set of laws. And the Bible for governing the laws of mobile home living are all in the mobile home residency law, or the MRL. This is a 2017 copy. I don't have a 2018. There were very, very little changes. Changes are made to the MRL by the state legislature. Your local park rules cannot supersede this document right here. They can set up rules that govern what time you swim in the pool, how many guests you can have, and all that sort of things. But if they dip into something that's in this document, and they are running that at you as their rule or the park rules, if you check the MRL and you find out they're in violation of the MRL, you need to call them on it, because this is the document that tells everybody living in a mobile home park what you can do and can't do in living in a mobile home park in the whole state, not just our county, but all of California. So it's called the MRL, or the Mobile Home Residency Law. So a lot of people just buy and move in and think, no, great, it's a great place to, I want to get away from living in a stick house or whatever, or have moved from another mobile home park, but moved into a park that has rent control. But that rent control ordinance, and this one that we're all governed under, was written in 1981. Okay? Now, in the back of your welcome kits, and I've seen a welcome kit, when I first met Linda, she showed me that blue-looking, aqua-looking thing that when you walked into the office here at Lemonwood, the park manager had this pre-made up, here's what we're about kind of information packet. Well ahead of a lot of other parks. I don't know of any other park, and we don't have one, that has that. But in the back of that was a copy of the ordinance. The bad thing that they didn't do was tell you what it was. It just shows up as the last few pages in that document. So they were handing that to prospective buyers and to people who eventually bought, because it has the rules from your park in there and everything. But the RSO, or the rent stabilization ordinance, is what the city is ramming at us on our difficulties that we're having with the city. When they saw the patrician coming on the tree issue, they decided to do something that would try to put the squash on somebody speaking up finally and saying, you can't do that. So they I hesitate to use the word smartly, but they smartly adopted this document. And it's called the Mobile Home Rent Review Board's Capitalization Policy, and they adopted it on February 16, 2017. What this is the IRS rules for defining capital improvements. And they have shifted sort of illegally from the ordinance. Page 2 of the ordinance is where the definition of a capital improvement is. When my committee first formed up in 2015, we spent 2 hours looking at page 2 of 23 and looking only at the paragraph that defined what the heck a capital improvement was. And we finally just threw our hands up and said, we don't know. We can't figure it out. This thing is so poorly written. So at that time, we decided to order 10 years worth of rent administrators reports and all the invoices and all the checks that have been paid to pay for drapes, typewriters, you name it. They were throwing the kitchen sink in, and as we turned out, it just makes me sick to look through your reports for 20 years that Dale has got his hands on, and some of the other parks, and see what Everett Garman was his name, was the rent administrator for the city of Ventura. And he was rubber stamping everything that was going through his desk. And rubber stamping means that the rent administrator, which he was, would then send out his report telling the park owners, here's what rents you can charge. Now let me clear something up real quick right here. The city does not set your rent rates. The city tells your park owner what the maximum rent he or she or the corporation can charge. If they don't want to charge any rent at all, or not increase your rents, they have the ability to do that. We only had 1 year in my 22 years in that park that they have not increased our rents. And that was a long time ago. And it's sort of a nightmare. We spend a lot of time, there's been a lot of water under the bridge. We've made some progress. One thing that we're up against is the execution of this document right here. That has really dropped the hammer on all of us residents and every rent committee that's formed up, and you guys have really taken off, and Lemonwood's running 90 miles an hour at the city. They haven't caught us yet, but they're right behind us, and Buenaventura's in there, and some of the other parks are kind of holding their own, but you need to be proud of this committee that's working for you guys, because they are really getting into the knowledge of the law and trying to go up against the city with some of these things. But we are all kind of getting hammered with this document being executed by the city. And that's what they're holding their hands on right now. So pass-throughs are common in rent ordinances, and basically the definition then, the problem becomes who interprets what is a pass-through and what isn't. This document, for example, surprised us. It said slurry is not a pass-through, but asphalt tear-out is, or overlay, if you know what that is. Tear-outs where they gravel down the asphalt and pour new asphalt on it. Slurry is just oil. So in here, they thought they were giving us a big deal. We're not gonna charge you for slurry. But the next paragraph says, however, dot, dot, dot. Whenever I see that however, I just throw up my hands. And, but, so, the big difficulty that your committee's faced with, and we're all faced with, and the BMRC group of parks that have some strong leadership in them, are all fighting this definition of what is and what is not a capital improvement, and how to prove it, and how to go up against the city and define it as such, and get them to agree with us that the owner does not deserve to be reimbursed. And you know, some people don't really understand that this ordinance allows them to do things under the guise of a capital improvement, and then we pay for it. And that is absolutely crazy, but it's the law. And there was a young man, not a young man, out in Buenaventura, when we first started this attempt at this thing to understand this and go against the city, he was fighting tooth and nail against everything. That he's ignoring the fact that they do have this law and we have to follow the law. The difference is that we have a difference of opinion from what the city has, and that's what your BMRC group, organized group, is working very strongly to deal with right now. We have hired an attorney. He's the prominent attorney in mobile home law in the state of California. His name is Bruce Stanton. And he is well respected in the legal world for ordinances and other activities in mobile home parks. I will tell you one thing we are trying to do as a VMRC group, among other things, is that we're trying to get the city, and the council is the one that can make the changes in the ordinance. The rent review board, we might as well not even have a rent review board. Right now there's 4 people on it. It has a maximum of 5. They sit there and look at you like dead fish in a fish market. They didn't talk to us for 2 years, and I'm not kidding you. They literally sat there and didn't talk to any speaker that got up to talk for 2 years. Then Diana Spagna, an attorney, was put on the committee, first female on it, since they reconstituted it in 16, and she started having communications. Well, suddenly a few of the other board members would tag along and we'd get some questions and answers going back and forth, but going to those meetings has really become pretty much a waste of time. They don't even know parliamentary procedure. They don't even know how to call a roll call or call for a vote on anything, and it's really disheartening to be in attendance at those meetings. But back to the ordinance, we are trying to get, in our request right now that's being dealt with by Attorney Stanton, we're trying to get them to change this ordinance and make it like the Ventura County ordinance. Now there's a difference. There's 26 mobile home parks that are not in an incorporated city that belong to the county mobile home ordinance. We have 12 in the city of Ventura that are under this ordinance. The county ordinance is extremely well written for both sides. And I have to file a disclaimer in saying this because I can't really talk about the county board too much because I sit on the county board. I'm one of the 5 members on the county rent review board. We had a discretionary application 2 years ago. A park in Ojai wanted to increase rents $500 a month.
Remember that?
So they jumped through the hoops. Our staff really made them jump through the hoops. One thing that's in these ordinances is what the procedure is. If you're not going to just do the normal CPI rent change, that requires no approval except the one person who's the rent administrator. Carries all the power, okay? But if you want to go higher than the normal allowance in the ordinance, you'd file what's known as a discretionary application. You have to open up all your books, your P&Ls, everything. You got to lay them out there. And until they are complete, the governing body, which in the case that I'm on the county, we made that park come up with everything, cross Ts, dotted Is, before we would even have them go to the hearing. And we had the hearing at the Board of Supervisors office up at the Government Center. The Board of Supervisors are like the City Council. They are our boss at the county, where the City Council is the boss of this ordinance in the city. The City Council can change this. The Board of Supervisors can change the county ordinance. We are trying to get them to understand that the county ordinance would save a lot of time and effort for everybody. It does away with capital improvements with one exception. And let me jump in and say, by doing that, you get rid of all this arguing that we are faced with now, arguing over drapes and typewriters and pool pumps and pool heaters and water, landscaping stuff. I mean, it gets rid of all that. The county ordinance only allows a pass-through if it's a brand new, if they built a brand new clubhouse in this park and you were under a county ordinance, that brand new building, because it's brand new, would be eligible for a pass-through. Everything else they do in the park, slurry, asphalt, all the things that are allowed, they no longer are allowed to be passed through. Now the county, when we have our board meetings, we're lucky if we have 1 or 2 people there. And the answer to why is that is that everybody is happy. The park owners are happy, the residents are happy. There's one other big difference. If you sell your home, your new buyer's rent can go up $75 one time for the next 4 years. Now that's not in our ordinance. Our ordinance has a clause in there that says the rent can't change, period, at close of escrow. My committee found 7, our park owner was changing rents every time an escrow closed in the patrician. We got 7 refunds back for 7 households, one as high as $702. Money that they charged illegally because they were violating the ordinance. And when we had a meeting with them about it, after we had processed about 4 of those and 3 more turned up later, my wife asked the head guy from Montgomery Management, why are you doing this? The ordinance says you can't do it. And I'm not kidding, his head went just like that. And he said, because everybody else does it. So we said, I just turned around and pointed my finger right at the manager and I said, we're going to be looking at every escrow you close in this park. So we go knock on the door. Hi. You know, Sunshine Lady may have been around, but I'm Chuck Eskew and I need to talk to you about some things going on in the park. Who told you that sets the rents in the park? Oh, the city sets the rents. Oh, really? No, the city doesn't set the rents. Park owner does. It's amazing the number of things that are told by park managers to prospective buyers. And it's all over the place. And it's really all over the place, especially if you're the #1 guy on the gun handle in that park, which you're looking at him in the patrician. So the city, in a heated meeting at the council, decided that they needed an ordinance in place that described what needed to be spoken to a prospective buyer and by who. We didn't hear the motion the same as the city attorney, but he asked my committee and the patrician to help him write this ordinance. This ordinance was placed into effect in January of this year, and basically we call it the seller's ordinance. It basically tells everybody in this room, if you get ready to sell your home, you have to abide by what's in this law. And that means telling your prospective buyer, you and your realtor have to disclose certain things of the rent control ordinance. Okay? Now, there's probably not many of you in here that know that this document exists, but Dale can get it out to you if you want a copy of it. It takes a lot of cost to print stuff up. We decided to print it. It's not required to be passed out to to residents by the management. Okay, we decided to pass it out to everybody in our park, and we put a little cover letter on the front. It says, important notice, read and keep with personal important papers, notify family members and their estate representatives from the patrician rent review meeting. And it is, a cover letter went with this, telling what it was. And in here it tells what you and I as sellers of our homes are required to do when we have a buyer. And if you don't do that, and something happens, and somebody comes knocking on your door after you've moved to Timbuktu, and suddenly you get a letter saying, hey, you didn't disclose things that are required in this document. You need to look at this and know about it. It didn't go as far as we wanted it. The people that were lying and passing wrong information were generally the park managers. They were avoiding giving people information correctly, who sets the rents, what rent control's about, and we don't expect them to learn the ordinance, but they need to know a little bit about it so they can define to somebody who's buying in that park that we're under rent control, and God, the last thing they need to tell them is that the city sets the rents. The city does not set the rents, the park owner does. But our manager is still telling new people that the city is the one that's setting the rents, and the city is the one that changes the rents every October 1st. Not true. So, this is a list of all the meetings we've had with the rent board since July 20th of 2016. We've had, the first one we were supposed to have was in May of 16. They canceled it the night before because 2 guys resigned from the board the night before the meeting. We went up to City Hall, and there was a notice scotch taped on the door of the council chambers that said, rent review board meeting canceled, no quorum. And that's how we found out about it. November of 17, they canceled the meeting because they had nothing to talk about. March 21st of 19, they canceled the meeting because a report wasn't ready. And they got 3 months between meetings, folks. All of this is difficult stuff, and we seniors shouldn't be faced in our retirement years with having to look over our shoulder with an ordinance that's controlling our lives and this document that they've supplemented it with. And so the fight goes on. I'm really happy to see what's happening in your park with regards to your group of people that are getting involved in learning what the law is all about. We can't learn it all. We don't agree with the city attorney on a lot of it. We don't agree with the mayor and some of the council people, but he's taken a different stance recently. And last October, there was a movement afoot to send me all your problems, send me all your problems. Yeah, we'll look at them. Yeah, we'll take a look at it. Don't send them to me onesies and twosies. Dump everything together. Yeah, well, he was running for mayor at that time. And guess what? He's a different guy today. I like him. He's an attorney. But he's changed his position. He's now the one that says, I cannot promote changing the ordinance for 5 people. And that was in a meeting at my house with my committee, and he was at our house only on patrician matters, not on, once VMRC on your behalf gave Bruce Stanton the speaking voice for us, we don't talk to city council people about the VMRC problems. That it's like you're getting a divorce. You don't sit down on the side and talk to your spouse that you're getting divorced from. If you got attorneys involved, the attorneys take care of it. Same thing here. We hired Bruce Stanton a year ago, and we have to keep that under mind and under control that he's now doing our bidding for us. And yes, we're directing him and watching him, and we've lost a couple of things and we've pushed a couple of things that he's, in our park anyway. And so he's done some work for us personally, and the patrician, which we paid for. But we hired him to basically, when this call came out from the then-to-be mayor, send me all your concerns in writing, BMRC got together and said, you know, let's hire an attorney to make our presentation for us, because maybe we just can't get it all together in the right venue of terminologies, and let's get somebody that knows mobile home law, and that's why we hired Bruce Stanton. He wrote a letter in November of 18 to the Rent Review Board. That was who we thought we would go to first. We knew they didn't have the authority to change the ordinance, but we thought at least they would put it on the agenda. Somebody would make a motion, let's pass it up to the council. They're the people that can change the ordinance. They didn't even put it on the agenda. And we've been fighting that battle for 2+ years of asking for things to be on the agenda and not getting them on the agenda. And there's a slight movement afoot that we think that's going to change a little bit. There's a new person at the city that's in charge of the rent administrator, and he kind of seems to be open-minded to listen to us. Our committee had a meeting with him about 2 months ago, and we got to know him. He came here from, I forget where he came from, but we have a new finance and technology director, and that's the department that the rent administrator works out of at the city. We don't like that because she reports to somebody that she should be reporting to the city manager, but now she reports to a department head where she's really a finance person, and she's the rent administrator second. And she keeps telling us she doesn't have time to answer letters, she doesn't have time to work research and so on and so forth. That's because she's doing her tax work for the city. So that's in our request to the city to put her in her own department, like Everett Garman was, and hopefully nobody else will interfere with her doing her rent work, and that will hopefully help us all here. But kind of in closing, to wrap it up, this is a hard road that we're being faced with. You guys here tonight are showing me that you're really interested. Obviously, you've got some big things to slay in this park. $600,000 is not chunk change. We've got $120,000 that we're dealing with right now that is electrical work that was done by an unlicensed contractor without permits, blah, 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 blah. But guess what? Guess what? The ordinance, poorly written, doesn't say that you have to hire licensed people to do the work in your park. There's nothing in there that says anything about that, or get permits. And if they do the work unlicensed and unpermitted, nothing in here says they can't pass the thing through as a pass-through. So, man, all these things are things that we never ever dreamed about. My wife spent 35 years working in the banking business. I spent about 34 in the insurance business. Never ran into Dale, but he'll tell you that a lot of things that we did looking at insurance contracts and stuff has helped us in our positions. I know he feels the same way, and I've watched him work in the last year and a half, knowing how to read the whereases and their twos, and when you come into that stuff that this ordinance is full of, and all the other documents, it helps to have some background in the business world. It's short of hanging a law license on your wall. I often thought in the 30 years I was in the insurance business that sometimes I was acting like a lawyer, and got there doing that. But it's a difficult road ahead of us. You guys need to stick together. I really like this petition idea for what you're after. I don't like the idea that the mayor wants a petition from all the parks. He was so afraid 2 weeks ago to tell us that, oh, this is going to be on the agenda next week and we're going to open it up for discussion. He wouldn't even do that because he said, I can't go to the council with 5 people from the patrician telling me that this is a mess and we need to straighten it up. Or even look at the letter that's written by the attorney, all the things that's in that. I need to have you guys go get a petition from all your parks. And you guys have jumped on that kind of indirectly, but he doesn't even want it on the agenda to discuss an alteration. And we're not, let me clarify one last thing. We're not trying, with the exception of trying to get them to rewrite the ordinance, I hesitate to use the word rewrite, change it. Change it to be like the county ordinance where there's no capital improvement pass-through. So you're not fighting over lakes and clubhouse roofs and pool cement and all. We had the pool cement last year that we got hit with. Okay. And then one of the other big things is that the ordinance as it's written right now does not give us in writing in the ordinance a legal right to speak up and say, hey, that pass-through's not proper. In other words, we don't have due process under this ordinance. Okay? So that's in the list of things, number 1 that was submitted by the November 28th letter to the Rent Review Board, the February 4th letter to the council, and the July 17th letter to the city attorney. They have stonewalled our letter from the attorney ever since it landed on their desk. And we finally got a response from the city attorney last week. He has passed the buck, and he is understaffed, underfunded, and he's now giving the matter over to the new city manager, McIntyre, for the city of Ventura. But the big thing about due process is this thing gives the park owner the right to appeal. If the rent administrator denied $300,000 worth of pass-throughs because they decided it wasn't a pass-through, the park owners have 20 days to appeal that and take it to a hearing. We don't have any legal right to appeal anything. Now what they've done is they've executed a document in October, not approved by the rent board. Mary Ekman, who that name has been floated around a lot, she was kind of running the rent administrator's job at the city with no authority, and that was one of the things we requested, that she be taken away from the rent administrator. But she designed a document in October of last year called the reconsideration process. So they're dreaming up all these internal rules that are affecting all of us. And now you can submit what they call a reconsideration request. But basically, you know who gets the final say in that document? You're going to love this: the park owner. So the patrician submits a document saying our $120,000 worth of electric doesn't qualify. They ship it off to the park owner. If the park owner says, no, we don't agree, ships it back to the rent administrator, and the park owner in that new document that Mary Eflin designed gets the final say. Now we've added that into our list of you can't do this, you're screwing the people, pardon me. You know, you just keep coming up with these guidelines and rules that benefit the park owners and make it easier for you at the city to just push things aside. So, you know, the due process is another big thing that we need added in to where we have the right to appeal these pass-throughs. And I use the word appeal because that's what it would be. It wouldn't be a reconsideration. We're appealing their decision. And the problem is, folks, they got the money. We don't. Now, I'm just going to close by telling you, so far VMRC, the 7 active parks, have not used the word lawsuit in any of our conversations at all. We're trying to stay within the law and work on a communicative basis with the various people at the city and occasionally with our park ownership. Very little with the park ownership. It's all controlled by the city. So are we gonna are we headed down the road towards hitting that wall where they constantly keep saying no and we don't get any reversals or we don't get any changes on our behalf, and the only way to do that is to end up on the courthouse steps? I don't know that it's gonna go there. We gotta have the money to do it, and that's a long time down the road possibly, but it might not be that long. And what can happen is, do you all know right now that you're paying $1.67 a month to pay back the legal defense of a lawsuit from 20 years ago? Look on your rent statement. They call it, what do they call it in your park?
Number one or number two,
There's $1.67 on your bill. What that is that 20 years ago, when the ordinance was written, it allowed that change of rent at close of escrow. The city, on our behalf, changed the ordinance and said, no, you can't do that. The park owners sued. It's called vacancy decontrol. The park owners sued the city of Ventura over that one clause in the ordinance that they put in. It was supposedly, it was working in our favor. The rents could not be changed except the one time a year at your rent anniversary year. For you guys, it's January 1st. Ours is October. So the park owners sued. The city defended the lawsuit. The city won. The park owners lost. In this ordinance, somebody who wrote it back in 1981 had the smarts, and I hate to use that word, but in there it says if the ordinance is challenged, win or lose, the city and the residents share the legal defense cost 50-50. So even if we lose or win, if we ended up in a court action, we're going to end up paying X amount of dollars for the legal defense of this ordinance if the city steps up and they're the ones that are named by the park owners sue. Now, Bruce Stanton, the attorney, does not feel that what we're asking for are reasonable opening of the ordinance. It's just administrative changes to the ordinance. Okay? There's a difference. So, and he has the experience to tell us that he's already presented in his letters that he doesn't think that these are major changes. They are facial administrative changes to the ordinance only. And he doesn't quite think that the park owners might group together and sue us over that if the council sticks their neck out, goes out on that limb and says, okay, we're going to make these changes for the residents of the parks and change the ordinance. He doesn't think that there's enough there for them to sue, but who knows? If you take away the pass-through reimbursement to them, that's money out of their pocket. Because right now, they hardly pay for any maintenance or upkeep in a mobile home park in the city of Ventura.
What do they do with all our money?
Well, we calculated it out. My wife was doing some work the other night. She took 140 spaces, which we have, added up all the rents and then divided it by 140 for an average rent. Times 12 gave $1.5 million to the park owner net.
Right.
Then if you were gracious and said, oh, well, maybe his expenses are $500,000. So you take $500,000 off of that, he's still making $1 million on our rents. And we pay him back for not slurrying, but asphalt, roofs on the clubhouse, painting the clubhouse, putting new doors in the clubhouse, putting new pool decks around the pool. And then interest on top of that, called amortization. I am winding down, so she wants to do Q&A. So,
but please repeat their question.
yeah, I hope I haven't confused you a lot. I told a new resident in our park the other day, after I knocked on her door, I said, I don't want to scare you. And, I mean, you show up at the the door and you say, there's some things you weren't told when you signed your papers, they go, uh-oh, what have I got into? And that's exactly what this gal said. If I'd have known some of that stuff, I'd probably never come close to a mobile home park in the city of Ventura. And so, if I can help before I go eat dinner, yes. Yeah,
Dr. Jimmy,
yes.
I'd like to know what the difference is between living in a mobile home park, like we with rent controls, versus a mobile home park in LA as an example, where they have no rent control. Can you tell me how that works rent-wise and how the rents are charged?
Well, I can't tell you how the rents are charged because that's done by the park owner, so I can't give you an idea what's in their mind. But the difference between a rent-controlled park and one that has no rent control is that the park owner can run rampant. Any time of the year that he wants to, he can change your rents. Under rent control, even though this is flawed in a lot of cases, it does control, that's why it's called a rent stabilization. It stabilizes the rents to where only once a year they can be adjusted. That's a good thing. Can they be adjusted? That's a bad thing, but at least it only can happen once a year. In the first 14 years of this ordinance, that clause where they could change the rents anytime the park owner sneezed, we have it from a woman, 84 years old in our park, moved in there in 1981, and she told me, Chuck, she said within 2 years we had 41 places that were up for sale because he kept changing the rents every other month, every time he sneezed. The rents were being changed. And that was the loophole in the ordinance that finally, after 14 years, somebody at the city, and I wasn't here at that time, that was 1995, they changed the ordinance and said you can only change the rents once a year. Well, that's when they sued. Okay? Yes?
I'm a retired contractor. Has CSO contacted the state license board and been notified that you...
We have. We've notified everybody but the White House.
And so CSLE's position on it is what?
Well,
Contractor state license board.
they're actively right now, the last word we got on this particular unlicensed electrician in our park is that they're deciding what to do with it. And the next move would be to give it to the district attorney because it's a felony. There's some felonies involved. There's some other lower level.
There is recourse going back to the individual that hires.
Oh, yeah.
Unlicensed contractor.
Yeah, it's a nasty mess, but I don't want to get into our particular mess. But yeah, we're aware, and I appreciate you bringing that up. We have a retired contractor. His wife is on my committee, and she was a legal attorney in the city attorney's office in Pasadena for 40 years. So she's my legal on our committee. And, yeah.
As far as Bruce Stanton, you said that the county ordinance would be a good place to start, probably, to change the city ordinance.
One of the VMRC suggestions is to change the ordinance and make it like parts of the county ordinance, which the big part would be to get rid of the pass-throughs,
Right. So
which the county does not allow.
Right, okay. All right, so it would be a good template to start from.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're just down the street. Our very first meeting we went to in July of 16, I walked into that meeting because we had been fighting this ordinance for almost a year trying to understand it. So we went into that July of 16 meeting and had 3 different ordinances. One of them was the county, and the other 2 were from 2 other counties in the state of California. And we said, here, board, take a look at these. Maybe our ordinance can be made as good as these or better. And we gave that to them in 2016, and they've done nothing with it. Nothing with it. Anything else? So now that I've scared you all, we all need to open the bar and yeah.
Just a quick question on this rent increases. I've always understood that the city controlled it by allowing increase of 1% to 3%, 3% being maximum. Is that a lie?
No, that's not true. The city does control what the max rents are, but it's controlled with the CPI. The CPI part of our rent cannot exceed 5% of CPI. When the CPI gets to 5%, that's as high as they can go in calculating CPI.
But I understood it as 3% would be the maximum.
No.
Is that per year?
That's per year, yes. Every year, there's one method of changing the rents that does not require any approval by the rent review board or the council, and that's the normal CPI and capital improvement pass-through that's defined in the ordinance. And any other type of rent increase like the one in Ojai, that was a discretionary in there. They went $500 and they had to file a discretionary. The rules in the ordinance, in the Ojai ordinance, say they have to file a discretionary request for that much money. And they had to do that, open up all their books and give them to the county staff. The legal department went through all the P&Ls and everything, and staff ended up making a recommendation to our board that they were making an adequate profit, which is what the ordinance says. The ordinance, both the Ventura ordinance, city ordinance, and the county ordinance both say the same thing, that this is designed to let the park owners make a fair return on their investment. And that clause has been challenged up and down the state of California. There's a lot of case law on it, but it's still held the test in these ordinances that the fair return policy is a part of the law, and the courts have upheld that they are allowed to make a fair return. Now, do we agree with what $30 a month is fair? No, sometimes, or $50. Or we had an $85 rent increase last month, or last year, for one park rent. Is it a question? Another question? Okay. Okay, your Q&A is over. I'm out of here. Thank you very much. Support your committee.
Some of you are starting to filter out, and we would like anyone who would like to sign the petition to, in fact, sign the petition before you leave.
She's got it at the back of the room. Yes?
Like we showed up here tonight. I'm not saying we're all.
Can everybody be quiet for a minute, please? There's a
I'm not saying
question.
that we're all available, but if we all present ourselves to the city council or to whatever meeting, does that make a difference then? One individual?
We have always asked.
The question is, if you all, or any of us in Theme Park showed up in volume at the city council, would you make a difference? First of all, I'll tell you what happens. You got 3 minutes speaking time, and if 50 speaker cards go up to the mayor, he will cut the speaking time down to a minute. Okay? So that's been done before. Showing up in volume, even if you didn't speak, they don't allow clapping at the city council. They raise, if you've ever seen them, raising your hands means I'm clapping for that statement. That makes a difference. If 50 of you are sitting in the audience and Dale is speaking at the podium and you like what he said, get your hands in the air. That will make a difference. I should say it should make a difference. I've got up there and spoken and they just blow right by you. Most of the time they don't want to talk to you at the council. They don't. And the unfortunate thing that we're faced with now is that we have districts in this city. And you have a park representative that it might be one person. So in that district, you don't get to vote for all the 7 council members anymore. You just get to vote for who's running in your district. So if we don't, for example, Matt Levere is our rep at the Patrician. In our district, we're the only park in his thing. So it would take that district to vote him out of office only. Whereas before, all of us in the city voted for all the people that were running for the council. You don't do that anymore.
Chuck, thank you so much. I know we could speak for another hour, but I see everybody starting to jiggle in their seats just about. And I do want to give Ralph a chance to talk about his project.
My project is money. I think you've heard Chuck talk plenty of times tonight about Attorney Stanton. This is not cheap. It's $175 an hour, and I know that a lot of you have been generous with your checks. We're going to accept more checks again. If you've not given any money, please help us do this. Like he said, we may end up in a lawsuit. If that happens, it's going to be a heck of a lot more money than we're paying right now. And we're paying Attorney Stanton $175 an hour. So if you can help, you can either pick up this piece of paper from me or just write out a check to VMRC, and at the very bottom put Lemonwood so they know where it's coming from. Yes?
May I say one thing? $175 for a lawyer is almost too cheap. The
You're right.
going rate is $400.
You're right.
Then you may write me a check for $400. I would accept
That was a great comeback. Okay, Dale wants to say something.
I just wanted to bring up the fact that if you have neighbors or friends here in Lemonwood that cannot be here, let them know that someone is going to come by later on this week and ask them if they would be willing to sign the petition. So I do believe in numbers speak volumes. So the city council, they're elected, and if we get enough people to sign this petition, they might pay attention. Thank you.
And I have 3 homes that you need to go to, Dale, because they couldn't make it tonight. So I wrote down the numbers, yes. And we are your HOC in working progress. Dale, Josh, Roberta, and myself are all on this special committee that Dale has been heading up and doing a lot of work, and thank you, Dale, very much. Now, something I'd just like to mention quickly is that, like Chuck said, slurry, they can't charge us for. But if they let it go too long, like they are, they're going to have to dig up the street and repave them. And then we're going to have to pay. So we're trying to get them to move along and get these things flurried, okay? So we're watching what they're doing. Yes, Frank?
Why don't you contact the soils engineer for an evaluation of the pavement?
All right, we will. Good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I would really like to thank what's-her-name for running this meeting.
I deserve that. Thank you so much, and please stick around so that Dale doesn't have to go all over the neighborhood and sign the petition. Thank you.
And bring money.